Georgia Tech should be preparing for the ACC championship game right now. Instead, they'll watch a 5-loss Duke team.
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome into Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. Not smart enough to get into Georgia Tech, but I am smart enough to talk about Georgia Tech football. Taking this daily journey with me, covering the Yellow Jackets, is my co-host, Jarvis Davis, who's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years. I want to start off by saying thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast and wherever you go to download them. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Anything less than, well, maybe you'll be sitting at home too watching the Duke Blue Devils play for an ACC championship game. It's just been awful to think about. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today on the show, we'll get into how should Haynes King be remembered? Who gave you hope and clean old-fashioned hate? But first, Jarvis, let's be real. Georgia Tech failed the Atlantic Coast Conference. Like, absolutely failed this ACC conference in the simple fact that on Saturday, folks are going to tune in to watch the Virginia Commodores play the Duke Blue Devils.
Or the Cavaliers, however you.
Cavaliers. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They don't deserve to have their name called out correctly.
Run it back now. Oh, man. You know what? Like, I think that's my frustration is that Virginia team is so boring to watch.
Yeah.
Who's their mascot? Like, does it even matter?
It don't even matter. And here's the thing, man. Like, this is the part that really sucks. Now we got a chance to, talk about the actual game and everything. For those who missed it, make sure you guys checked it out. We did it. We went live right after the game. We right there for you all to help soak and lay on the couch and all that stuff. We right there for you. But when you sober up on after the Saturday results and said the little small chance that you had to get into the ACC championship, and you start to really think about this thing, you're just like, man, not only did you fail fan base, you failed us. You know what I'm saying? You failed us too, because I wanted to go to Charlotte and be there for the game. You know what I'm saying? I was making plans, but you failed the conference. To be justified to be in conversations and start to earn some respect, because ACC, they got a bad rap, man. They got a bad rap. In these final games, Louisville spanked the dog mess out of Kentucky, which is an SEC school, which everybody, of course, they want to praise the SEC. They got Mark Stoops fired.
Got him fired.
They got him fired. They got Mark Stoops fired. So, Clemson beat South Carolina. The horrible season that Dabo has had up the road in South Carolina, they beat the dog mess out of South Carolina. So there is a sense of pride that, needs to be respected, with this conference. And I feel like, man, Georgia Tech they just did not take advantage of the opportunities. We pointed out the plays that they missed going up against the big dogs, right? Up 3-16. You didn't take advantage of them. And when you play teams of that ilk, you have to take advantage of those opportunities. And I think that missing out on the ACC and representing this conference and being the team that everyone was talking about, that you had a player that was in the Heisman conversation, you have a finalist in Aiden Bird for the Lou Groza Award. That's the type of recognition that you get when you are in those conversations, but you didn't live up to that. So you don't hear anyone talking about, Haynes being up for the Heisman. So you have to take advantage of those opportunities, man, because you really missed out on being one of those up and coming teams that people have to respect because you were able to come up big in the moments when you were supposed to.
Yeah, I think here's the tough situation, Jarvis, is like coming to terms with the fact that yes, it's going to be Duke and Virginia, the Cavaliers, playing for the ACC championship game on Saturday. But apart from that,
last night in the Pips.
Yeah. Look what Miami did to Pitt. Like, absolutely embarrassed them.
Boat raced.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're in a situation right now, especially based on what the committee had done previously by penciling in Miami into the, as the ACC champion, which we knew was going to be nearly impossible. Like the scenarios were already difficult for Georgia Tech to make that game, much less Miami. So
Right.
Seeing all of those things, we now have a position where, I mean, if Duke wins the conference, if they find a way to beat Virginia, very well possible, especially as crazy as, this season's been, there is no way the committee is putting a 5-loss Duke Blue Devil team in the in the college football playoff. So you could have a Miami team who the committee has loved all season and has played some really good football as of late, especially blowing out teams that you're supposed to, like a Pitt, like an NC State. They still have that win over Notre Dame early in the year, even if the committee doesn't want to give them a whole lot of value for it because they also want Notre Dame to be a part of these things.
It's all about tiers, Caleb.
Yeah.
Got to be in the right tier in order to consider
they look
the head-to-head.
Teams together.
That's the last thing that we need to be doing is worried about head-to-head matchups.
Right. Yeah.
Worried about good losses, Caleb. It's all about good losses.
It's like the fact that you could end up very realistically with a team that did not win their conference in the college football playoff and a team who won the conference on the outside looking in and everyone being like, yep, checks out, makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, the way in which, first off, like the ACC champion are the tiebreakers are, and like this was such a weird thing of, I mean, they actually had to go through a couple of these steps because of how everything shook out, and Cal beating SMU was, it was outside of just the head-to-head competitions, the win percentage amongst all common opponents. They were getting into the win percentage against common opponents based upon their order of finish and proceeding through other common opponents based on their order of like we're getting, I think that's what, 3 steps in of a 7-step process to determine who plays for the ACC championship. Just what a terrible situation that could have been avoided had you maybe, not gotten down 28-0 to Pitt, had you potentially, not embarrassed yourself against NC State. Like, it's just, man, looking at it at this point and knowing who's going to play to be the champion of this conference. And I still think that matters to people. I know there's a ton of people out there who don't care about conference championships, who, are all of these conversations happening about, oh, do you want to just like skip it and make the playoff and all that sort of thing? Like I know Brent Key, I'm sure he cares about winning an ACC championship, and you're ultimately not in that opportunity because of how you played over the course of this past season. And I think just reaching the end of it is when you go, man, like I guess I'd have a better feel, I think, Jarvis. Like if Miami was in the ACC championship game, you'd go like, all right, at least the conference is going to get represented well. But now so many conversations to dog on the ACC, even to your point, when you talk about what Louisville did against Kentucky and what Clemson did against South Carolina, it's going to be moot points. It's going to, they're unfortunately, the national conversation is not going to go that way. However, I do want to, for all the bad that has happened to end Georgia Tech season, for everything that happened in that game on Friday, on Black Friday, that ultimately didn't go the Yellow Jackets' way, there were some guys who gave us hope. Who were those players? We'll talk about it next. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets to the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up your app, and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through and look at matchups, compare your seat views. You pick a game, tap a section, have your tickets locked within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go Game Time. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Jarvis, obviously, when you don't win a game, it's hard to talk about the positives, and usually coaches don't want to do those sorts of things. Well, neither of us are coaches. We're podcast hosts, and so we do get to talk about the positives and what we saw from that clean old-fashioned hate game that ultimately doesn't go the Yellow Jackets' way, because it did feel like there were some bright moments and some things that give you some hope of what we're going to see in the future for Georgia Tech.
Absolutely. The first guy that comes to mind for me is EJ Lightsey. You think about this guy's story, where he came from, coming out of Fitzgerald, Georgia, going to Georgia initially, and then ended up at Georgia Tech. And I think that this was the game where you kind of you look at the way he played, led the team in tackles with 12, and just really understanding and showing and revealing that he can be a leader for this team next year in his senior year. And I think that, we kind of talked about this a little bit before we start recording. I think that, EJ has the potential to be one of those guys where you're saying, hey, he might get an invite to the Senior Bowl, because that's where you can go from a potentially 6th, 7th round pick to a mid-round pick, or sometimes even first. It depends on where you start, right? If they start around about the 3rd, 4th round, and you can hop into that second to late first round, because that's just how it works down there in Mobile, Alabama. So I think having a guy like that leading your defense, who's built like one of those guys that can go to the next level, I think that was something that you can say with the experience that he has. Obviously, he has talent, right? And you just saw the results of those things, of the size and the speed and everything like that. And you just, sometimes it makes you wonder. Even talked about this after the game, and just like, all right, this defense only gave up 16 points against the guys up the road. So what happened in other games?
Right.
And it was one of those things where he kind of said that, hey, it makes you wonder, like, what really happened in those games. So, to have a guy like that, with a junior another year eligibility, coming back to, kind of boost that stock, if that's what he wants to do, and I'm pretty sure he does. I think that can be the guy that potentially be a leader for you, and to help be one of those guys that we were talking about going into that Pitt game, having your seniors being able to step up and lead, not only from a vocal standpoint, but lead by play as well.
Yeah, I think for me, the guy that I saw showing up 2 weeks in a row early on in these games, and that I think still had some impact, but you saw like someone who made an early impact that you're like, man, if you can just get a little bit improved, maybe put on a little bit more weight in another year. And that's Braden Manley. Like we've talked about pass rush and how this team needs that pass rush. And I think him showing up in the Pitt game and then back in the game against Georgia and getting an early sack and disrupting an entire drive really, and kind of like flipping it back on your offense. And, you know, did your offense take care of business necessarily? No. You know, they didn't hold up their end of the bargain ultimately. But I do think as we talk about, like, there's going to be a need of influx on this team of pass rushers, like to improve this team for sure.
Well, specific on the interior as well.
Very much so. But I think, you know, to have a guy like Manley hopefully be able to take that next step with another year, because I mean, this is a guy 1 year removed from being the player of the year in his conference from Mercer. And so like you're seeing the growth there that's coming along. That's maybe just a little bit of a late bloomer than other guys. And that's like with a position of need on this team. That was something that I was like, okay, if this can just continue on, I think, you know, him along with, you know, you start looking at the linebackers like EJ, like Spalding, amongst others, and are like
AJ Butler.
Yeah.
Picking off Gunner. That was huge as well. And, you know, I think one of those things it's funny that you mentioned that, you know, up front, because I mean, that's how you win football games.
Absolutely.
Especially in the South. I don't care what conference you in. if you want to win in the South, like you have to be, you know, up front. It has to be what at least one of your strengths on your football team from a roster construction standpoint. I asked Brent about that after the game, because, you know, they were having some issues setting the edge, you know, specifically against the run, and I asked him, was he pleased with it? And, you know, he did. He almost pulled a Kirby Smart, you know, pick one word that I say, and like, no, I was not pleased, which I understood. Y'all lost. I get it. But he did talk about how, you know, there were some things that, you know, they did well, you know, they executed, you know, because ultimately, you know, they only gave up 16 points. And I think Montre Bradford is in that conversation, the sophomore, and Jordan Boyd. He ended up putting a gun on the ground. Like when you have guys rushing the passer, doing what they're supposed to do in the run game, that kind of gives you a little excitement about what's to come next year, with the idea of adding to it, because like you said, that interior defensive line, coach got a lot of work to do when it comes to getting guys in there that can be effective for you.
Can I also just like throw this in there too, that having 3 out of your 5 starting offensive linemen return, certainly a big factor, especially when the guys who you'll be replacing are guards. And I don't want to like say that position is lesser than. They're all important in God's eyes, you know. But Jarvis, you know, when you got to start replacing guys, I'd much rather closer to the interior than those tackle positions. And then, I mean, just the chemistry that you build with your center is certainly a big part of that. So I feel like that gives me a level of comfort, is knowing how solid that position group has been. And I mean, Georgia is going to test you in that area. Like they are dominant, even if they're not necessarily a team that gets after you and gets sacks. They did in this game. They are still, those are some big boys, you know, that you got to defend. And so I feel like the way that this offensive line held up for the most part and knowing you've only got to replace Rutledge and Fusel on the guards it gives you some optimism amongst what's obviously been a season of really strong positive moments that kind of right here on the back end of the year went rather negative, unfortunately, with how things tend to go. However, before we get out of here, Jarvis, let's just talk with the people about how impactful and how a guy like Haynes King should be remembered. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because it's their cyber sale and the deals are huge. Like, I've personally been given Omaha Steaks as a gift before, and the reaction is absolutely always the same. Excitement the minute that I open my door and I see that box has arrived. I just know when it hits the grill, like, that's going to be a perfect dinner night for me and my family. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Jarvis, as far as the regular season goes, no senior wants to end with a couple of losses in a row, especially when the final one is against your rival. No one wants to finish with one of their worst football games, being at home at Bobby Dodd Stadium. And yet that was the case for Haynes King. And for all the negativity at the end of the season, as I mentioned, kind of with the season overall, there is so much good to be remembered about Haynes King and just the way that he sort of, along with Brent Key, feels like changed this program. Did he not?
Absolutely, man. Those sort of he did. You talking about a legacy.
Yeah.
Haynes King is gonna go down as one of those guys that help Key get whatever he achieves in the next 4 or 5 years. He's the head coach of this team, or longer. Just throwing it out there. He's gonna look back and say, "Hey, man, this guy helped me get this program where it needed to be. This guy helped me drag this program out of the depths of what that was Jeff Collins when he was the head coach of this team, and they were just being known for Waffle House cups. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some respectability here now when you come down to the flat. So, and that's because of what Key has established and going out and getting the guy like Haynes King and bringing him in. So, yeah, this is a legacy class because, I think back to, when I played college ball, like, the class that I came in with was the class that everybody looked at now and say, man, this started the run. This started it.
Yeah.
I went down to my school this weekend because we're in Division II playoffs, and I was messing around with a family, and because they had number 90 sweaters on, and the guy, and that was my number in college, and I was messing with him like, hey, let me have that sweater so I can take it home with me, so I can wear it. And they was like, oh, hell no, it's not my son, blah, blah, blah. And he was right there. So I got a chance to talk to him, and they just won. They're moving on to the quarterfinals. 21 years ago, we made it to the quarterfinals of the Division II playoffs, and that was the farthest that we've ever gone in the playoffs. So they have opportunity now to kind of move on further. So he was talking about, like, yeah, I remember Coach was telling us about when y'all played against Valdosta State, and y'all end up losing that game. So yeah, it was just, you just think about like the players. Haynes is gonna probably experience the same thing 20 years from now when he looks back and have those conversations. He comes back and visit, and Coach Key, preferably still there, still holding it down as a lifer for Georgia Tech, and they're gonna have those conversations. And you be like, man, I remember when we brought you in and you came in here and you did your doggone thing. You in top 5, top 10 categories and passing yards and passing, and still on the verge of could potentially pass Joe Hamilton in a couple categories. So, this is one of those instances where I know it's kind of hard to reflect in the moment, and he got a chance to do that a little bit. But, man, just from the outside perspective and just looking at what he's been able to accomplish for this team, yeah, he's going to be remembered fondly.
It's wild, Jarvis, because for as much as I know Georgia Tech fans would like to say thank you, it was really cool to see him post-game after the game on Friday. He was the one saying thank you to everyone else.
For the fan base, but not even just the fan base, like just the whole Georgia Tech itself. The people in the building that believed in me and gave me this chance. And like I said, all I can really say is thank you. I can't thank them enough to give me this opportunity.
Wild to me.
Yeah. It is, man. That's why, like, after a loss, you don't want to start reflecting because, you're still in the moment. Sure. I still have another game left. I have a bowl game that I got to get ready for, and I want to end on a good note. You don't think about those things, but for him to kind of like, of course he was asked a question, but, to go straight to thanking the fans, thanking all the people that in the building, thanking the people that brought him in, it just says a lot about the type of person that he is. And we know the type of person Haynes King is. We know this character that he has and what he's been, the leader he's been for this team and what he's done. But, it's always cool to recognize it when he's when we see it, and when he exemplifies that.
Yeah, broke the school record for total touchdowns. Broke a school record for total offense in a games with 100+ yards and 100+ rushing yards. There's just so many things that his name will either be number 2 to Joe Hamilton, or he was able to pass Joe in so many different categories, just showing kind of the greatness that he's had over the course of his career. But it is technically, it's not over yet. There's still going to be a bowl game. We'll be learning about that in the coming days. We'll have all that information to talk with you guys about, especially with the transfer portal and National Signing Day and like everything, the whirlwind that the next few weeks, it feels like, are about to be in college football. We'll have that all for you right here on Locked On Georgia Tech. That'll do it for this episode. Make sure you subscribe to our show on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts for free. Follow the show on social media, Locked On Georgia Tech, as well as Jarvis at JarvisD90. I'm at ATL Johnson 18. Thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen today. For your second listen, make sure you download Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Donna break down the most interesting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.